the news. Okay. Just remember what we've talked about in probably all of these serial killer podcasts. It's probably been mentioned. They want notoriety. They want to be in the news. They want to be a household name. So for him to ask, is it in the news? That tells me that two things. He either doesn't want it to be in the news because he's kept it a secret for so long, and maybe he's in his mind is thinking, oh my God, my family's going to learn about this on the news instead of me telling them. I'm not sure. But he probably is asking that because he wants it to be. He's caught now. So now I want to be notorious. Now I want people to associate my name with serial killing. And that's psychopathy at its best right there. Who wants their name to be synonymous with that? It's different. It's different if you are researching it. It's different if you're a police officer and that's your job. But if you're the perpetrator and that's what you want to be, that's your goal in life. What has happened to you that has caused you to want that? We've talked about how they want power, they want control, they want that official people to look up to them and even fear them. BTK, he got caught because he was sending letters back and forth to the news station, the newspaper, and the police department. And he was taking credit for killings that they had not assigned to him and sending in pictures of pieces of souvenirs that he had taken in to prove, like he had the driver's license of one of his victims, and he took a picture of that and he sent that to the police to prove, here's some proof. And the police knew that if they could just find out who it was and find his cache of souvenirs, they would likely be able to, close that case and connect a lot of murders to it. And that's exactly what they did. He wanted that notoriety. There's another one. It might have been BTK. There's another serial killer who actually called the news station to speak to it was a female newscaster, and said that he was very disappointed that his name wasn't mentioned in the news. And it was very threatening. He was upset about it. It was really upsetting that he hadn't been talked about. So that's that ego, that self-absorbed, I'm important, I want power, I have power, that these people have. And it's an interesting psychopathy, but I'm certainly not educated as much in that area, so I don't know why they do it. I don't know if they just feel like that's the only way they can be important or notable. But they certainly do it. It's a very common trait among serial killers. The alleged serial killer, who's being held without bail, was put on suicide watch after being taken to jail on the advice of medical staff. Typically that's done if they make any kind of comments about, well, I'm done now. I don't want to live. I don't want to have to go through all this. I don't want to put my family through this. And some do kill themselves. And that's controversial as well. And you know that. Look at Jeffrey Epstein. He wasn't a serial killer, but he was a serial rapist and child molester. And do I think he killed himself? No, I don't. I think that someone had him killed. I think he had too big of an ego to kill himself. But he knew too much. He ran in circles where that knowledge could destroy people. And so I don't think he killed himself. I think someone killed him. But that's a pretty common theory. You can look that up anywhere. Criminologists had a 2011 profile of the serial killer. Of course, he was an unknown serial killer, so their profile included the women were probably killed by a white man in his mid-20s to mid-40s. He's married or has a girlfriend. He is well educated and well spoken. He's financially secure, has a job, owns an expensive car or truck, and lives or used to live near where the bodies were found. How amazing is that? How amazing is that? The only thing I see that can be thrown into that would be an anomaly was the fact that she was using food stamps. And I swear I'm gonna swing that back around to her having a special needs child. Maybe they're on Medicaid, or I don't know. Their money had to be separate, because someone who is financially secure with all the things he had is not going to qualify for food stamps. And if they do, it's because it's illegal. They've done something illegal to qualify. They're lying about income. On Friday, details began emerging about Rex Heuermann, who was arrested and charged with the murder in the killings of 3 of the women. Prosecutors said he was the prime suspect in the death of the 4th woman. He is a married white man who works as an architect in Manhattan, lives in Massapequa Park, which is 15 minutes from Gilgo Beach. He owns a Chevrolet Avalanche truck. At the time of the killings, he had a Chevrolet Avalanche, and that's an expensive vehicle. I mean, it's not a Mercedes, but it's expensive. It's a nice vehicle. Certainly one that would match his education and his whatever class I guess he was in. I'm confused about that now. I'll be interested to see when the facts come out. There's going to be a mugshot that I upload to the website, but if you saw him walking around, I don't think you would think that he was a serial killer, but I do think he looks kind of deranged. But again, that could just be because I know he's a serial killer and I'm reading that into it. I think he looks like he could be really mean or hateful, So Heuermann's lawyer, defense attorney Michael Brown, told reporters that after he was arrested, Heuermann broke down in tears in front of the lawyers and said, "I didn't do this." Brown has also released a statement to the media emphasizing his client's spotless record. And here's what the release said. Rex Heuermann is 59 years old with no prior criminal history. He is a college graduate, is a hardworking licensed architect who has his own New York City firm. He's a loving husband to his wife of over 25 years and an involved and dedicated father to his daughter and stepson. He has entered a not guilty plea and has insisted he did not commit these crimes. There's nothing about Heuermann that would suggest that he's involved in these incidents, and while the government has decided to focus on him, despite more significant and stronger leads, we are looking forward to defending him in a court of law before a fair and impartial jury of peers. Now, I will say, in my mind, he is already guilty. I think I have that tunnel vision. Part of it is because the things that I've been reading about him basically says that they believe they've solved the case. And so, in my mind, and in my experience in researching these, you typically don't have someone arrested and convicted of these type of things unless you've got some pretty significant evidence. We know that the exception to that we talked about in my last podcast. That was, I can't think of his last name, but that was the gentleman who they thought did the bombings in the park, and they were really, they had that tunnel vision where they were only looking at him. He fit the profile. The profile's not always right, or there are multiple people who fit that profile. So it may not, it's a help. It helps. It gives you guidance. It helps you to weed through the huge list of people that you may have. as suspects, but it doesn't mean that it's exactly right. Remember, this article actually said that that their 2011 profile was very similar to him, and it absolutely is. Not all of it's right, I don't think, though. I don't think he had a happy marriage based on what people have said about his wife. Looking depressed, the house being cluttered. I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of unanswered questions that hopefully we'll find out as time goes on. The former mayor, Giuliani, swung by Heuermann's residence on Long Island on Saturday and reportedly asked one of the cops how close he could get to the house. His spokesperson later told the New York Post that Giuliani was on scene to cover this heinous crime as part of his hit new live stream show. Well, that's just, come on, Giuliani. Come on, do it the right way. That's ridiculous. What about the other bodies? Through the cold cases of the so-called Gilgo 4 now appear to have been solved. See, it's another one of those statements. Law enforcement officials on Friday shared no additional details about the status of the investigation regarding the other 7 people whose remains have been found around Gilgo Beach since 2010. There was also no indication that investigators believed Heuermann was involved in those deaths. So we're only looking at the Gilgo 4 attached to Heuermann at this time. So he, certainly that's a serial killer, but he may not be responsible for those other 7. I think that they're considering those other 7 because there had to be some similar MO. We'll find out about that later. Instead, the officials who spoke on Friday's press conference only indicated that their investigations into those other cases were still ongoing. Even with this arrest, we're not done, he said. There's more work to do in the investigation regarding the other victims of the Gilgo Beach bodies that were discovered. He urged anyone with information to call the county's Crime Stoppers hotline, which it's on this page. The DA said this case is not over. At a press conference regarding the arrest, Ray Tierney vowed that the case against Heuermann was only beginning and that we're continuing to execute search warrants and we anticipate getting more evidence. He also thanked the various law enforcement partners in the task force that ultimately cracked the case, and in particular, how they continued to keep details of the investigation secret since they knew the suspected killer was himself closely following news about the case. We knew that this one person would be watching, and we didn't want to give him any insight into what we were doing. Tierney said, and we also didn't want him to know just how close we were getting. This is very common too. We see this in many other cases. Some cases are just blind, dumb luck. Like, oh my goodness, I just had a complete blank. Dahmer. I mean, he could have been arrested multiple times. He should have been arrested multiple times, but he was able to get out of it. And then we know that he didn't really pay attention. They weren't really talking about him. So he didn't really pay attention to the news or anything. They literally just stumbled upon all this stuff. Now, BTK is a different story and Ted Bundy, different story. They were both profiled. They were both, both of them were suspected. Ted Bundy was suspected early on. BTK was not because he wasn't identified. But they knew, however, that Ted was watching what was going on. They knew that BTK was watching what was being said. They were working specifically with the newspaper and the news station to not say certain things, or to say certain things to manipulate the situation. So there were times the police are doing things that we know nothing about. And I'm sure if I was a family member of a victim, I would be very frustrated that things do tend to take a long time. I mean, look how long they've been investigating this, since 2010. And they're just now, have someone that they have enough evidence against where they were granted an arrest warrant. So